There are stretches of asphalt in this country that people treat like a live wire after nightfall. Roads drivers avoid when the sun goes down, the sort you reroute around if you can. Picture a single lane slipping into a corridor of trees, the yellow line swallowed by shadow, a radio that goes dead the moment you turn on the stretch. These are not all the same story, but they share something, a reputation built from accidents, grief, small impossible moments, and the quiet insistence of generations who learned to steer clear. Tonight, we follow those reputations, the roads people refuse to drive alone after dark. If you enjoy mysterious road lore, hit like and subscribe. 1. Annie's Road, Riverview Drive, New Jersey. Annie's Road is an unassuming bend that curves toward a river, flanked by maples whose branches knit together overhead. By day, it could be pastoral. By night, it becomes narrow and intimate, as if the trees themselves lean in to listen. Locals say the name comes from a young woman who died there decades ago. The story is told in soft, careful tones. A prom night gone wrong, a car that left the road, a girl in white who never made it home. Drivers report seeing a figure by the roadside, dress pale in the headlights, hair plastered to a face that never fully resolves. Witnesses claim the figure sometimes appears at the passenger window, then is gone when you look again. Others describe a sudden drop in temperature by the bridge, the hair on the back of the neck prickling as if a crowd of hands passed over your skin. People who grew up nearby will tell you not to stop, not to offer a ride. Teenagers dared each other in daylight, but even the bravest avoid it after dark. Some suggest the sightings are grief taking the shape of a person. Others chalk it up to fog and shadows. Either way, the caution remains. Don't let your headlights linger too long on that shoulder. 2. Suskin Road, Pennsylvania. Suskin Road is a long, thin ribbon through low hills and birch groves. The name sparks a different kind of warning, the Suskin Screamer, a spectral woman whose keening is said to echo along the pavement. According to accounts passed around the county, a grieving woman once drove that road looking for a lost lover. Something broke inside her that night. The legend says she can be heard before she's seen. A sound like unmodulated static, then a human cry that climbs the car windows. Witnesses report radios that spit and cut when they pass a particular mile marker, as if some frequency claims that piece of road. A few say their rearview mirrors showed a silhouette on the shoulder that wasn't there when they glanced back. Police logs reportedly contained calls from scared drivers, though records differ on details. Locals tell newcomers, don't pull over to help a lone figure, don't slow to listen. Skeptics propose stories grew from isolation and a bike accident years ago. Believers say that doesn't explain the inexplicable cold that settles into the cabin itself. Whatever the truth, the sound of the screamer keeps people moving after dark. 3. Clinton Road, New Jersey. Clinton Road is a name that surfaces in dozens of tellings, often holding a shelf of small, unnerving claims. A ghost boy at the bridge, tire tracks that stop in the mud, and phantom vehicles that seem to follow for a while and then vanish. The road twists through dense older wood. At night, the trees are so close they make a tunnel. The bridge at the center of the lore is where accounts converge. Children playing long ago, an accident, a mother who never left. Locals say teens used to dare each other to park and listen for laughter. Witnesses describe headlights in the trees without the corresponding reflection on the road. Others report a fleeting boy who steps too close to the side and disappears under the guardrail when you blink. One frequent element is the unexpected. Drivers claim their phone flashlights die, their radios turn to snow, and the car feels unnaturally heavy. Authorities answer quiet, strange calls from drivers who describe shaking, not from speed, but from an unshakable impression of being watched. There are pragmatic explanations. deer, mist, and the mind's appetite for pattern. Yet the road's reputation has hardened into a rule for locals: avoid Clinton Road after dusk. 4. Devil's Washbowl Road, Vermont. Up in Vermont, there's a rutted lane that locals call the Devil's Washbowl. The name itself carries a warning. The lane's topography, a bowl-like hollow carved into the landscape, traps sound and light in odd ways. Legend has it that miners and an old farm family once had settlements nearby, and one winter there was a collapse that took lives. Accounts are patchwork, records are unclear in places, but what people report now is consistent: voices that seem to come from below, lights that hang just above the road, and an uneasy smallness that makes the air taste metallic. Drivers who pass through at night say their headlights sweep a space and briefly reveal figures at the ditch, only for the beam to slide and find nothing. Witnesses claim the air goes cold enough to fog the windows from the inside, and some describe the sensation of being pressed downward, as if the road itself wants to keep you there. Locals tend to call it by the old name and keep their distance after nightfall. Explanations offered include echoes, swamp gas, and the way certain landscapes play tricks on perception. Still, people avoid it. The bowl seems to hold more than weather. 5. Boy Scout Lane, Wisconsin. Boy Scout Lane is tied to a story that has spread far beyond the county lines: a troop that never returned, or a fire in an old building. Accounts differ depending on who tells it and how far back they trace the tale. The core motif is children, and children change how a place is remembered. The lane is narrow, lined with pines, and at night it feels like a throat. Witnesses report things that make adults' voices go small. Drivers say they hear footsteps in the woods beside the road, quick and light, and then a small voice calling a name that sounds familiar but isn't yours. A few longtime residents recall seeing small handprints on car doors, impossible, icy rings appearing out of nowhere. Teens who once dared one another there tell newer generations that some parts of the woods stay quiet, but Boy Scout Lane is not one of them. Law enforcement has logged calls over the years. Some explanations point to vagrants or animal sounds, others to hoaxes and campfire embellishments. But the persistent detail, the impression of childlike presence, keeps the lane off most local maps after dark. 6. 22 Mine Road, West Virginia. Accounts differ. There's a mine road back in the hills that people whisper about, but the stories knot together inconsistently. Some elders recall a collapse, some talk about miners lost to gas. Others refer to a figure seen along the track. Records are unclear, and names fragment in retellings. Where the archive leaves gaps, imagination fills them. Drivers who tell their stories speak in fragments. A woman will say she felt someone brush her sleeve at a particular bend. Another claims the radio picked up an old song, not static, not a station, just a melody that didn't belong, and then cut out. People who know the road warn that even the bravest don't like to pass it alone after sundown. There are possible reasons: abandoned equipment, natural noises amplified by the mine shaft, the mind making narratives out of danger. Still, the combination of unsteady history and strange reports is enough to make the road a no-go at night in the minds of many. 7. Bray Road, Wisconsin. Bray Road sits in a landscape of dairy fields and quiet towns, but its reputation is of a different order. Sightings of a creature, at times called a beast, that moves like a man and runs like something else. The Beast of Bray Road entered local lore through a series of sightings over years, with witnesses describing a tall, hulking figure that sometimes uses the road as if it were its own path. Drivers have reported headlights sweeping over a shape that shifts from upright to quadruped, the sound of heavy paws on pavement, and the unsettling feeling of something pacing them in the rear view. Others say their headlights picked out a face that wasn't human, then nothing at all when they tightened their grip on the wheel. Locals say hunters were out one year and came back shaken. People stopped telling the joke about going out at night because the joke stopped landing. Rational explanations range from misidentified large animals to hoaxes. Believers point to repeated, consistent descriptions from independent witnesses. The result is the same. Many avoid Bray Road when it gets dark. 8. Route 66 near Barstow, California. A famous stretch of asphalt carries its own ghost stories. Along Route 66 outside Barstow, the highway's vastness becomes a different kind of loneliness. The legend most often told involves a woman in white along the shoulder, a hitchhiker who steps away from a passing car and dissolves into the desert heat. Drivers report a phantom vehicle that appears in the rear view, matching every turn, every speed change, only to vanish when they pull over. Others say their radios switch to static as they pass a particular mile marker. Some have seen headlights moving through the desert with no vehicle present. Locals, truckers, and townsfolk warn, do not stop for a lone figure after dark on that stretch. Plausible reasons include heat mirages, fatigue-induced hallucinations, and the trickery of long, monotonous driving. Still, for many, the idea that something walks the roadside of a highway built for motion is a reason to stay on the faster, brighter main road and avoid the old alignments at night. 9. Jamestown Road, North Carolina, Lydia. Jamestown Road is quieter, a ribbon through farmland. The figure tied to its lore is often called Lydia in local retellings, a woman who walks the lane in a dress that catches the headlights. The story the townspeople tell is one of loss. A life ended in a small car wreck or an act of abandonment, depending on who's telling it. The important part is the image, a lone woman by the roadside, a dress too white to be real in the dark. Witnesses say her presence is brief, a silhouette that steps out of the ditch and toward passing cars, then dissolves back into the field. Some report headlights suddenly dimming or a tapping noise like fingernails along the passenger side panel. People in the area tell drivers not to offer lifts and to keep moving. The story has been used as a caution to teenagers and as an explanation for strange late-night calls. There may well be simple origins, misidentification, roadside markers lit oddly, but the respect for grief embedded in the tale makes locals reluctant to mock it. For many, Jamestown Road is a place you don't take alone after the sun sets. 10. Mount Misery Road and Sweet Hollow Road, New York. These neighboring roads carry names that already set an atmosphere. Mount Misery and Sweet Hollow run through old farms and the skeletal remains of settlements. Stories associated with them include an asylum escape, ghostly children, and a burned mansion whose outline keeps showing up in rear-view reflections. Drivers report varied sensory details, whispering that seems to come from the trees, faint laughter that stops when headlights sweep the spot, and a sudden sense of being followed by a second presence inside the vehicle. Witnesses claim their taillights are echoed by another set in the distance that matches every move before dissolving. Neighbors say emergency services have fielded calls from motorists who insist something is wrong with their brakes when the cars are mechanically fine. Explanations range from old drainage hollows that amplify sound to the psychology of secluded roads. Still, the names themselves, Mount Misery, Sweet Hollow, carry a weight, and that weight has made drivers sympathetic. Many choose the longer, brighter routes after dark. 11. Cuba Road, Illinois. Cuba Road runs through farmland that turns to shadow early. The long sight lines make the darkness feel sudden. Accounts here center on shadowy figures that stand too close to the fog line and on the recurring motif of radios filling with static at a certain county sign. People who have grown up there say the road felt different even in their parents' time, a place where headlights seemed to slow and hearts sped up. Witnesses report seeing a lone jogger or a person in dark clothes who appears at the edge of the light, then is gone upon a second look. Others speak of a patch of air that feels frigid for no reason, or the smell of perfume when there's no one on the shoulder. Locals warn visitors, keep your doors locked and your windows up. If something appears, keep going. Law enforcement records contain occasional calls describing a frightened motorist, though explanations often point to pranksters or simple natural phenomena. Yet the persistent instruction from locals is plain: don't take Cuba Road alone at night. 12. Riverdale Road, Colorado. Riverdale Road is asphalt and blind curves, a route that rides the edge of suburban comfort and open country. Its ghost stories are less floral and more shadowy. A burned mansion years ago, a figure walking among the ruins, and sightings of a silhouette that appears at the edge of the tree line. The image is of something that belongs in an old photograph, yet moves in the present. Drivers report their headlights picking out a standing shape across the ravine, and then, when they slow, finding only the dark groove of vacant land. Some say their car stereos briefly play a voice, not words, but a low, urgent hum when they pass a particular bend. Residents tell newcomers that police have been called for trespassing and loitering more than once, and that teenagers who once dared each other at night learned to respect the road's hold. Speculation includes misremembered landmarks, fires that left strange silhouettes against smoke-streaked skies, or pranksters. But the combination of abandoned property, unlit curves, and repeated stories makes Riverdale a place drivers avoid alone as the hours grow late. If that made your skin crawl, wait until you hear the patterns that run through all of them. There are motifs that thread these stories together. The vanishing hitchhiker who steps into your peripheral vision and then is gone. Headlights that pursue or fade inexplicably. Radios that die or switch to static. Cold pockets on a warm night. The sound of children laughing where there should be no one. These motifs act like regional dialects of the same language. Grief, accident, and isolation translating into repeated, similar sensations. Drivers in different states report the same sensory oddities: an unexpected chill, a whispering at the window, the sensation of being watched from the back seat. Whether these are the mind's response to danger, the residue of real tragedies, or something else, the net effect is social. Families tell one another, teenagers dare one another, and eventually everyone in a town adopts the rule to avoid a place after dark. Skeptical explanations exist for every claim. Fog, fatigue, road geometry, atmospheric interference with radio signals, and human pattern seeking all play roles. Some stories began as warnings handed down to keep young drivers from risky stretches. Others grew from single traumatic events that the community remembers and retells. But explanation does not erase impact. Even a purely psychological phenomenon can be powerful enough to change behavior. If a generation says a road is dangerous after dark, the road becomes dangerous in a practical sense. Fewer headlights mean fewer witnesses and more real hazards. A caution before curiosity takes you to the wheel. Do not go looking for these places at night. Respect the warnings, respect private property, and respect communities that carry these stories with them. It's one thing to be intrigued, it's another to put yourself or others at risk to prove a point. On these roads, the most unsettling moments are often small and precise. The radio that fades to static exactly as the passenger mirror shows an extra pair of headlights. The sudden cold that fogs the windshield. The fleeting white dress at the ditch. The child's laughter in a place where there are no houses. When such moments recur across miles and years, they become part of the cultural topography, markers people use to navigate not just space, but safety and propriety. Whether you call those markers superstition, social caution, or the residue of deeper mysteries, they function the same way. A communal map of what to avoid when night compresses distance and moral certainties. One last thing to remember. These tales belong to people and places. They are not trophies to collect online, nor dares to be carried out on a weekend. If you pass through a town where a road is named in hush or laughter, listen first to the local warning. Ask permission if you must learn more. Don't trespass, don't provoke, and don't treat sorrow as entertainment. Stories of loss and strange occurrences deserve the same care you'd give a neighbor's secret. For more vanished tales and haunted routes, subscribe and check our playlist. There are roads people refuse to drive alone after dark because of what's been said to happen there, and because communities have chosen to protect one another from the unknown. Some stretches of pavement prefer daylight. Some stories insist on the dark.